Hi, welcome back. Give it up for DJ I Awake. He's part of the Sime crew. He travels everywhere with us and comes up with strange jingles and songs for me that I like very much. We are going to move to a question which I think is becoming more and more important to brands that want to touch the heart and souls of clients, to leaders that want to run companies where people really care about what they're doing. And the question is true engagement. You know the difference between it just sounds like sales talk and something that is true engagement. And I'm going to invite two panelists that for me knows a lot about this topic, but from different fields. One of them is Lottie Knutson. She's one of our most experienced board professionals with experience everything from Stena to H&M to all kinds of other things. But she's also somebody that really, in a very engaging and powerful way, communicated during the tsunami catastrophe and became the voice for many people explaining the terrible things going on there. The other speaker is a gentleman called Staffan, and I met him when I was working with him at Wallenberg Institutet with SEB. And he taught me that when he recruits leaders and what he wants to see in leaders, he said, well, I want a guy that actually, or a girl, that actually makes the public bathroom a little bit nicer than when they came in. Think about that. And it hit me like a bomb. So now every time I go into a public bathroom, I want to be that person and make it a little bit nicer. But it says so much about what you why you do something. He's also been working with extremely interesting teaching models and methods, and now he's recently joined Telia and is driving their charge in corporate learning and leadership. So please welcome Lottie Knutson and Staffan Åkerblom. I'll have you here in the middle.
So you want me here?
Sit down here, yes. Very welcome.
Thank you.
True engagement, and we're speaking a lot about digital transformation here, and somehow in there, I feel that you need to get people really engaged. And I'd like to start with you, Lottie. Sort of, when you look at digital transformation, you're sitting in so many different organizations. What are some of the things that are the most important steps for you?
Well, first of all, stop thinking about those buzzwords. You know, digitalization, and everyone in old companies get very scared, you know, oh God, what's that? It's something like an alien. So stop thinking about that. Stop looking at the customer. Where are the revenue streams? Where can we work more efficiently? Where can we help the customer enjoyment or just the efficiency already on their side? And then it's much easier, and then you're not afraid. And then, of course, bring in new competence, etc.
But I mean, in order to do that, you need to get people to believe. You need to get them engaged. How do you do that as a leader? How do you make people...
It's so boring. It always starts with yourself as a leader. I mean, you can never say if other people should do it, but start with yourself, being very curious. So next time when you are going out on those, 24 hours, the top management are going out to work in reality, what is it called? You go out 24 hours normally.
And that's a trend. You work with somebody else's job, right?
Yes,
yeah.
And someone who's really like frontline people. And then instead of going in my old company, you would go to sit in the call center or claims department or maybe go flying with their air hostesses. I asked, could I work with a programmer? Just sit and watch what they do. You have to dig into the things yourself and change your own role, and then start changing other people's roles and responsibilities and the way you measure success.
And we're going to come back to KPIs, or how you measure success. You recently joined Telia, and you are doing some pretty interesting things with a completely new take on leadership training. Could you elaborate on that? How's the connection between sort of consciousness and leadership and results? And
well, first of all, I've been working with leadership development for more than 20 years, and I come to the conclusion that it maybe is we're taking a too big bet and putting too much pressure on our former leaders, managers. So the initiative that we're working on now is to release the leadership in everyone, and this is, of course, very connected to engagement. I see myself as a cultural worker, and engagement is really at the core of all this. And you can call it also self-leadership, leading into what you talk about this morning with Laurie about mindfulness and so forth. We have initiatives and solutions in place already to enable all our employees to capture what is what are you believing? What are your values? What is your purpose? And ultimately, why do you go to work in the first place?
But you did that, and you did a campaign, internal campaign,
yes,
and it just exploded. Could you just very briefly explain what that was?
Well, I think, you know, there is so much engagement out there already, and the trick is, so people are engaged already in all sorts of things in their life, right? But how can you connect that to the journey that the company is on? And clearly at Telia Company, we're doing a big transformational journey. And one way is then to, once you've clarified your own values, integrate them with the company. So we're no longer saying, oh, we should all live, which is the CEO's dream, everyone should live our corporate values. It doesn't really work that way. We ask our employees to tap in their own values into the common good. So how do you integrate? It's a very creative act. Another thing that we do is we're now building a solution, it's not launched yet, but where every employee are able to make something good out in the society. So it's going to be a matching, essentially, a matching solution, driving employees' engagement for whatever they burn for that is relevant for the company. So the theme is digital inclusion. It could be, you know, helping elderly to get online and to connect in that way. It could be helping young kids with net safety. It could be helping entrepreneurs, clearly a very important target groups for a company like us. So these are different initiatives that we're doing to connect for real, because I think engagement is really an inner journey. You can do, you know, ice cream and balloons and so forth and tell great customer stories and everything that we're doing out there, and you feel engaged? Well, only if you're really engaged in your own life. So it is very much an inner journey as well as an outer one.
But there's also massive digital transformation happening on an industrial level. You came from the travel industry, and you started out with 0 in digital revenues, right?
Yes, I have the feeling we started when some people in the public were not even born. But I really started in '99 in my former company, TUI, and we had 0 sales. And when I left, we had 80% online sales. That was 10 billion kronas in the
10 billion.
Billion turnover in the Nordic countries. So of course that was a journey, fantastic journey. So when we really started to take off in 2004, we set very clear, 2004 is really old, isn't it? But I'm a dinosaur and I'm proud of it.
Sime is in 96.
Yeah, so we started setting really clear goals. Like at that time, this was in 2004, it was like 50% online sales, although we call it e-commerce at the time. And we set for that goal. So that was a common goal, very blunt, very clear for everyone. And then we started changing our own roles. And my biggest learning in that is to connect closely, go to bed more or less with the IT director and all his team. Because but that IT tech is coming into normal business. It's not to have a digital separate strategy. It's a business strategy, and you include the digital tools in that one.
So you have sort of closer marriage between tech and business, I understand that. And you need to get people engaged, and you can do that, as you're saying, you engaging in things that you care about in society through Telia makes you care much more about the company and the customers and so forth. And then you're saying that you got to be a passionate leader yourself, and you're super enthusiastic and passionate.
Yes, I am. But you also have to reward. I mean, look at the people, coming back to my old company, we had call center people, you know, and they were rewarded like on turnover, sales. Every holiday they sold, they had a little tick in the box and some money. Now, what do you do when the call center becomes a online help center for customers not being able to do their booking? You have to reward in another way. Quality or whatever. So we really had to start with ourselves and then change every role and the way we rewarded people down to the front line, to the customers.
Yeah, but that's so interesting. Everybody speaks about innovation here, and then they go home and they do things with KPIs that are not driving towards innovation, or self-leadership, for instance. How do you build that into KPIs, or how do you award that?
Well, we learned just from a sprint we did 2 weeks ago, asking our employees about this solution that we're building. And what we learned is that they love the idea of being able to be out there and doing good, redefining the experience of work, but they really fear that this will be measured. please don't make this part of all the performance management and all that. By the way, we scrapped that already because it turns out that performance management doesn't really work. So they asked, please don't do that, because there is a value in itself in doing good. And as you start to measuring that, so of course you can have KPIs, such as what's the level of participation on this platform. And we see that it's going to be building up. But if judging from the engagement so far, I think we're going to see some rapid development in that area.
But you also had a campaign that I liked a lot. People could ask, or put something about themselves, I like.
Yes. Well, we have this comes back to the slogan is, redefining the experience of work for good. And it's about fundamentally how people tend to relate to work, or at least have been doing historically, is that job is something that you should do, ought to do. There are stuff that you have to, I must. But what if, with true engagement, that is transformed into something that you do because you want to? So you have this inner drive, and that the context in which you're working is enabling you to do that, and even more of that, and growing in that context. Ultimately, beyond that, it's you do the work because it's part of your identity. It's who you are. Work can be self-expression. And that does not mean that anything goes. It has to be relevant. But that's the shift, moving from I must through to I am. And that's going to be, the exciting stuff. You can probably do this in many of the audience here, is probably in maybe companies in the smaller context, you could probably do that. For me, the challenge is how do you do that large scale? In a company with legacy, 160 years old, clearly corporate power, but how can we sort of be acting like a startup?
Yeah, and I think that's the big question for any large company. How can you be fast, nimble, agile, curious, all of these things, and at the same time running the tanker? And when you were a leader, how did you try to balance these things? What part of your thinking went into what you need to do good in the future, and what things were core business or things that are?
Well, I think one has a responsibility oneself when it comes back, old legacy, very political, when everything is process, reporting, documentation, then you have to find your way out of that. It's not sustainable, and it's not inspiring enough, at least not for me. So you need to be your own rebellion, I think, and really, again, never forget the customer, the revenue streams. How can we develop the business? Because writing more reports and having even more processes, it won't develop the business further. So again, coming back to the customer and how you can make money, that's what it's all about. Is someone prepared to pay for this, more or less? But that's, for me, that's fun. And you need to, as you say, it needs to be fun. And if you don't find an inspiring environment, you need to change. You need to move on. And I do think I get a lot of energy from the new startups. I just joined Carrera,
I know that.
as a tiny part owner and in the board of directors, main board. And it's very inspiring. And it's all consumer. It's all sales and you come back to you have no legacy. No reporting, you just go right off. How much do we do? How much do we need to sell?
But then the journey itself, it's inspiring. You get passionate by you're creating something. Whereas if you're sitting in large company boards, maybe they're not as passionate about sort of just sitting in a large organization. Speaking of which, I asked Mia, are the boards changing now?
Yes. I was in H&M with Mia, so we both left now, but I totally agree with her. The boards are changing, and rapidly so. But I think you mustn't forget again that it's, again, looking at the consumer, at what do they want, what are they prepared to pay for. Some boards now have the discussion, maybe we should bring in some digital savvy, some expert, but that would be a one-trick pony. You still need to focus on the business and the consumers. And looking at, even if you have those old guys in some boards, 70 years old, they are as close to they're in love with their cell phone, as we talked before, the French woman being in love with her robot. thought. I mean, we are all in love. We spend more time with our telephone than our partners. So, and that goes for the old guys as well. So look at their behavior and be curious about the consumer's behavior, including online. We're all there.
Yeah, but I'm seeing that there's sort of without passion, nothing happens, and without compassion, the wrong things might happen. And I'm seeing a shift in leadership. That leadership before were much more wolves on Wall Street, and now they're becoming somebody that has, a larger role, or think that what they're doing needs to have meaning in different dimensions.
Yes.
Would you agree to that?
Well, I think, let's talk about the role of managers, because in a way, the profit motive is absolutely relevant for an organization, may not be for the employees. And organizations need managers, but people do not necessarily do. So but I don't think there is a contradiction anymore between this, because you can absolutely, I strongly believe, that the profit motive will be served if people take on something beyond that. And it also comes back to the customers. Of course, it's all about the customers. And you can be really touched by the kind of work and contribution that you're doing for them, but they are also humans. And they want to do business with someone who knows who they are, what they stand for and believe in, and that it is for real. So I think that's the key word. How can you make that real? And then for managers, it's all about managing this, what might seem as a contradiction between the organization's motives and the motives of all their people who are actually producing all the services. And I see that contradiction being smaller and smaller, if it ever exists.
I think it comes down to being curious and daring to bring in very different people. My next book will be named, Nerdy is the New Black. I think we really need to be much broader in our way of thinking. It has nothing to do with color of the skin or religion or whatever. It really comes down to diversity in thoughts and allowing that. I think Mia was talking about that too. And be open and curious to that, not feeling threatened. So curious and then not so afraid of making mistakes. I mean, most of the things and the projects we do, they are just big fiascos, aren't they? And we're so afraid of that. So we sit on our hands and we do nothing. And that really stops businesses. So we need to be bold and more curious, I think.
And we try to be bold and curious for Sime, and we've had a dream for a long time that what if we could do something for kids where 13 to 17-year-olds could try to be digital entrepreneurs, test their dreams, and do all kinds of cool things. So some years ago, we started Sime Next Generation, and it was amazing to see how much, exactly what you said, exists in these kids. They are truly engaged, they are brave, but then it's very difficult to get into university. It's very difficult for them to actually get jobs in these companies doing these things. And there's a lot of people that are left outside. So we have a dream of creating some sort of new university or teaching institution or academy where you come in based on fire in the belly, not based on grades. And you don't go there for 3 years to create a job, you start a job the day after. And
but that's how I use I have 4 children, and I use them. They are my slaves, I use them. They teach me. I mean, they're online all the time, and they do those funny things. You just follow what they do, and it's such a great source of inspiration. So maybe it should be a university where old MDs, CEOs, etc., and managers come in and learn some from the young guys.
And I think that's exactly the down the alley we're discussing, because when I call Staffan, and he's for me one of them who knows most about learning, and so the art of learning and teaching. And we said, okay, let's get a workshop together on Sime, 1 o'clock today, where we look at the future of learning with the ambition to create a university where you become the best digital entrepreneurs, and where people come from all different countries, cultures, race, and creed, and where you don't have to have good grades. You just have to have good ideas and a very strong view. And how can we teach people like that? Do you think what do we need to make that happen?
Know. I mean, I don't know. That's why we want to invite others, right, with all the right brains. But I think fundamentally it's probably there are some principles in learning that I think would probably still be valid, given that we are still human beings. But what the technology is enabling is just mind-blowing. And so that's what we want to explore. And I think that next year, maybe I want to tease you, because why do you call it Sime Consciousness, the conference that you did last spring? I was there. It really should be Sime Unconsciousness, because what is fascinating about the human beings and the barriers that we put on ourselves is all buried in the unconscious stuff. You know, all the rules that we take for granted, and we don't know that we live by them. And when you start disrupting that, then some really great things could happen. And I hope that that's going to be part of whatever we will create for these kids.
But that sounds like a teenage dream of mine. Unconsciousness, not very.
It may not fly as a brand.
But we're usually a Thursday evening after Sime. We're unconscious, all of us. But
I really
challenge you, all of us, to come join us. And the ones of you that like these questions, what can we create for entrepreneurs, and how can we co-create it? And I think that maybe next year we sit here with the first class and ask them how they were doing and which wonderful companies they created.
And maybe they will end the evening being unconscious.
Most likely.